And welcome back to Good Morning Tobago. This morning, we continue our conversation that was started yesterday due to the press release that was released out of the Office of the Chief Secretary on Monday regarding the reshuffle of the T.H.A. And this morning, as we have this conversation, I have the privilege of speaking with Mr. Martin George, who is attorney Martin George, actually. And I want to say good morning, Mr. George. How are you doing?
Good morning to you, and a special good morning to Tobago. And I am doing very fantastically well.
It's great to see that face this morning. Now, the conversation continues to go on about this reshuffle that we saw on Monday. As we start the conversation, do you have any opening thoughts?
Well, the thing is, reshuffle such as this is basically akin to a cabinet reshuffle in the national parliament. So it's really a human resource exercise. So in other words, you are, using your human resource management skills to say, well, okay, look, I have tried John in this position, but the thing is, I think that his skill set is more ideally suited to this other area, or I need to bring in a new person entirely into this capacity to be able to perform the roles and functions. So what I found was absent or missing from the press release or even from the office of the chief secretary was any explanation to Tobagonians as to the rationale for the changes. So, I mean, the fact of the matter is that, yes, it's easy to, decry the changes as, you're just reshuffling the same old deck of cards, or you're just recycling, the same old people. But the fact of the matter is, if there is some reason or rationale behind it from a human resource management perspective. So in other words, you need to come forth and explain to Tobagonians and say, hey, listen, this person who I am putting here as an assistant secretary, they bring this skill set to the table. They are qualified in this area or that area, or, like, for instance, how you put in Mr. Sampson as a secretary, you would, read out his CV, you would list his qualifications, his educational criteria, and so, well, look, this is what makes him most suited, or maybe it might just be his experience, you would set out these things and say, well, look, this is the reason why I am putting this person here. So I mean, I think that is the part that has generated all the discussion in the public space, because there has been that absence of explanation or rationale or justification.
Mr.
And
George.
I mean, in terms of the hefes in the party, you notice nobody was really touched or moved or rotated. I think it's only Pastor Baines who suffered the ignominy of, being promoted downwards.
And Mr. George, one of the questions that continue to come to the forefront is, and you touched on it a bit, why the assistant secretaries as opposed to the secretaries who are the actual decision makers, the movers and the shakers at the division? So what comments, or do you have any idea what the strategy behind that may have been?
Well, that's the thing, and that's where it's difficult to read into the mind of any politician as to what their thinking is or their logic is. And that's why I am saying that Mr. Augustine ought to come forth to the people of Tobago and explain his rationale. Because remember, he does have the prerogative to be the one to advise the president. Listen, we want this person here, we want that person there, we want so he does have that power and authority. And in the exercise of that power of authority, it must come with a certain level of responsibility and accountability, whereby he ought to be able to explain to the people of Tobago and say, listen, this is the reason why I have chosen this person to be an assistant secretary in this division, because of this skill set or this, experience they have. And this is how we are hoping to see an improvement, because you don't do a reshuffle for, to make things worse. you do a reshuffle because you want to see an improvement in the service delivery, the accessibility that the general public would have to goods and services in the T.H.A. So therefore, you must provide that justification and explanation. And I'm hoping that he will do so before the end of the week. In fact, I would like to use this platform of your very popular program and your show to issue a public call to Mr. Augustine to come forth and explain to the people of Tobago the thinking, the rationale, the justification behind these changes which were made.
And this announcement was made sometime back in 2022. We're in 2024 and we're now seeing the actual reshuffle. Do you think such an announcement was premature?
Well, the thing is, I think that given the length of time that the idea has been floated and bandied about, I think it really has, instead of it having the effect of a big bang, it's more like a damp squib. So the thing is, it really is, and that's why my initial reaction, I said, it really amounts to much ado about nothing, because in other words, for almost 2 years, there's been this talk about a reshuffle. And then, if it is that, if you think of, say, for instance, a deck of cards and, you only reshuffling the lower number cards that have little value, and you're not dealing with the face cards, then people will say, well, come on, you're just engaging in sophistry.
Few months left up until the next election. Well, first we will see the general election happening. Do you think that such a reshuffle can be effective in the political strategy of this current administration?
Well, the thing is, I don't know what is the political strategy of this current administration. So as to whether this is going to be effective for them, I'm not sure. One would imagine that there are internal forces at play here, and that might be the reason why, Mr. Augustine is probably strengthening his internal, position. So that really might be part of the justification for it, So in other words, we see that all the time with leaders, they surround themselves with loyalists and, persons who are faithful to them. So that way, in the event of any, untoward, movements, they have their supporters around them to rally around them, So it might be that is part of the logic behind it. But in terms of the overall political landscape for, the T.H.A. elections, I'm not sure that anyone is really going to be moved, in terms of saying, well, I will vote for this party because they appointed this person as assistant secretary, or they appointed that person as assistant secretary. So in the grand scheme of things, I don't see it moving the needle politically in any way possible, but I think it's more internal than external.
And I think this question as well continues to come up, and I've asked it several times before. Do you think it's too late in their term to have a reshuffle?
Well, the thing is, I guess it's never too late to do the right thing if you are doing it for the right reasons. And that's why I'm saying that, Mr. Augustine must condescend to particulars with the Tobago public, otherwise it would just appear to be that you're just playing mind games with the population, saying you're doing a reshuffle and, really it ends up being, a farce, more than anything of substance. So I think that if he comes forth and he gives that explanation, you present the CVs, the, qualifications, the experience of the individuals, and you explain, you show the logic. So if you put in somebody in an area that deals with agriculture, if it is that they do have an agricultural science degree and they have experience in the field, then you justify it. And then people will say, well, yes, the boy is on the right track. He knows what he's doing. He's making sense. But when you do it and it just appears to be like you're operating by VAPs, and there's no accompanying explanation or justification, then I'm not sure that you are necessarily winning over anyone who may have been unconvinced by your efforts in office thus far.
Okay, and during the campaign, we saw that this current administration, they signed what we deem to be a social contract. And during that process, the chief secretary then he stated that he had the power to discipline any member of his administration, including Mr. Duke. Do you think that this reshuffle comes as a part of him, trying to discipline his administration?
Well, the thing is, I mean, as I said, it may be an internal realignment exercise based upon what is going on within the bowels and the bosom of the party. So it might very well be part of that. However, the reality is that for the public consumption, it does not appear to have the effect of bringing anybody to heel. I mean, of course, when he took action against Mr. Watson Duke, that was very dramatic. That was very, it was very clear that you were taking charge, you were taking control. And in fact, it ended up with Mr. Duke being left with a party with no followers. And, Farley ended up with followers and no party. That's how they parted ways. But the point is, at least that action was very decisive and clear that the public could have seen, well, look, yes, you are taking some firm, decisive step. In terms of this reshuffle, as I said, without the accompanying, explanatory notes. And, Mr. Augustine, as a former teacher and educator, he knows the importance of putting in your explanatory notes. It's like you're telling children, don't just show me the answer, show me the working, show me the arithmetic, how you got to that answer, or you're preparing a thesis and you must put in your bibliography. Mr. Augustine is familiar with all these things, that you must cite your references, your sources, your justifications. So I think that he needs to do that, to assuage the concerns of the public and to let people understand, well, look, there is a method to the madness.
Okay, and we want to thank you so much, Mr. Martin George, for coming on with us this morning and putting your 2 cents in there. We always value your opinion, so thank you. Guys, we're going to have
you are most welcome, and I just hope that it was worth